Welcome, everybody. Welcome, YouTube. We're in YouTube right now. Victory Life Podcast 7603. Everybody hop on in here. We're talking about being single over 30. So this should be a good stream. I'm going to try to keep this 15-20 minutes because I'm supposed to be someplace else right now. And but I don't want to like forget this download. Like I got such a good download. I want to release this. So I don't know why this is such a weird, like, I don't know why the lights are doing such weird things. But hopefully everything's okay for you guys. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. So guys, I wanted to talk about being single over 30, and I wanted to cover this from a certain perspective, and I want to cover it from the perspective of the flesh, because I'm pretty sure no one's got this revelation before. Because every time we talk about being in the flesh, we think about Galatians chapter 5, where it talks about works of the flesh. And it's all based on sin, right? So I'm going to like share that with you just so you can see what I'm talking about. And then I'm going to go a completely different direction. Because I feel like that's kind of the battle that a lot of us are in, is we think about, here we go. So Galatians chapter 5, it says the works of the flesh are evident in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. They are sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. So that's what we think about when we think about the flesh. We think about actual sin. But I have new revelation on the flesh that I think is keeping us in our single places over 30. So if those of you guys are single over 30, this message is for you. Everybody hop on in here, get comfy. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about how our flesh is affecting us. And I want to give a little bit like of transparency on my singleness journey so that you guys can see yourselves in this and not just look at it from the Bible perspective, because I tend to have people who are not churchy and totally atheists, and I think this is still a word for them. I think they're going to be able to see themselves in this. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to talk really quick about being single over 30. This is going to be a really short one. I just want to hop on, give this word, and then we can like carve it out and do like lengthy Q&A later. But I want to at least release it now while it's fresh in my head so that I don't miss anything. So if you're single over 30, hit like really quick, hit subscribe really quick. This is going to be a short 15-minute word just for you. This is new revelation on being single over 30, and it's all about your flesh, but it's not what you think. It's not what you think, guys. So if you are single over 30, hit the like button really quick, hit the subscribe button really quick. This message is absolutely for you. Hold tight for 15 minutes. It's going to be the best 15 minutes you've ever spent. I can promise you. And it's going to help you. It's going to help you a lot. So everybody hit like really quick at the same time. Everybody hit subscribe really quick. Come to Victory Life Podcast 7603 on YouTube. I want to release this word. It's going to be helpful to you guys. So listen up. So I was having, so transparently, who hasn't loved and lost, right? All of us have. All of us, if you're single over 30, you've probably loved someone and you've probably lost someone. I don't want to focus on the love and the loss part so much. I want to focus on the how we got there and why a bit more than the who and what. I want to talk about the how and the why so that we can start uprooting ourselves out of singleness. One by one, I want us to be uprooted out of singleness. So here's a revelation, and I was reflecting back on a little bit on how do I feel when I get the tension of like longing for someone, because I want to introduce you guys to this new view on flesh that's absolutely not sin, but it is still flesh and it's still working against our singleness. It's working against us to keep us single and keep us from our marital partners. And so I want to reflect back, and I have to think back because I've always struggled with the tension of waiting. And anybody who's impatient, This message is for you. If you normally want what you want when you want it, this message is for you. So I want you guys to hold on and receive this word, because this is absolutely essential. If you're trying to get out of singleness over 30, this is essential. And I promise you, you've not heard this before anywhere. I promise you. I've been on walks with God all morning. I've been in my secret place all morning. So when I get a word like this and I'm trying to really be someplace else, I have like a 3 o'clock appointment. So I'm not trying to be on here all day. I want to get the word out and I want to get on with my day. So I'm going to be faithful here. So I want to talk to you guys about the singleness over 30 and the little bit of our flesh. And most people think, when they think of flesh, they think of Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. They start thinking about the dissensions, the divisions, the rivalry, the jealousy, the envy, the covetousness, the drunkenness, the sexual immorality. They start thinking about that. But I'm actually not talking about that specifically when I talk about flesh this time. And here's what I want you to understand about the flesh. Yes, that is the flesh. That is the flesh. But the flesh is also your default state. It's your default state when you're not getting what you want immediately. Y'all, you hurry up, like the stream really quick. Hurry up, share it, subscribe. This is big stuff. This is big stuff, y'all. This is why we're single over 30. Everybody hit the like button really quick. Everybody hit the like button. Everybody hit the subscribe button. This is the reason why we're single over 30. It is the flesh, and it's not what you think. It's not the flesh per Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. It's not that one. It's this part of the flesh. It is the default state that you feel when you don't get your way. That default state. And what I got new revelation to this morning is my default state that I feel when I don't get my way. It has changed over time. This is the revelation. Let's talk about that real time. When I didn't get the love that I wanted when I was younger. And you guys over 30 can feel me. The young people may not be able to feel me on this, but people over 30 know exactly what I'm talking about. Raise your hand if you've had a roster of people that when you feel lonely or sensitive or you're longing or you didn't get the relationship that you wanted, who in their past life, or maybe you do right now, who's used to having a roster that when you don't get what you want, you don't get the woman or the man that you want, you just go right to your phone, you simply start scrolling and you go to the roster and you go to the next person immediately. You haven't even healed. Who's dealt with that? Who's dealt with that whole roster thing where when you don't get what you want and you're in this space of tension and the tension feels uncomfortable because you didn't get what you wanted and you wanted it so badly? Who knows what it feels like when in the space of that tension and your inability to hold the tension of not getting what you want immediately? Who knows what it feels like to reach for the roster, the list of people that you have access to, the people who will say yes, who's used to the roster that I go to, and they just go start dialing up. They start hitting people up on the roster. Guys, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? I want to talk about it because that used to be me. I used to do that actually. Before I got saved, I would do the roster thing. I'm keeping it real. Okay, so there's nothing wrong if you've got a roster now, and there's nothing wrong if you used to have a roster. I want to make the point is that our flesh changes over time and we are fighting our flesh, and that's why we are in a position of singleness. That's what I wanted to talk to you guys about. It's a serious thing. It's a serious thing if you're trying to get out of your singleness. If you're okay single, then keep scrolling. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. But if you're trying to get out of singleness, then this message is for you. Okay, so we've got to find our flesh. When we're single, we've got to identify what our flesh is. And the Bible tells us, Galatians chapter 19 describes your flesh. But for single people, I'm gonna raise a concern that I think our flesh has changed over time. And what used to be our flesh 10 years ago when we were 20 is not the same flesh that we have when we're 30 or when we're 40. That how we feel when we're holding tension, when we're waiting for, like when we're longing for someone and we're waiting for love, how we handle that in the midst of all of that tension, we hold it differently in different decades. We hold it differently in different moments of time. So if I were to go back into my old days, before Christ days, my BC days, I can remember when I wanted someone or something and I didn't have it, my flesh back then did a different thing. What did my flesh do? My flesh didn't like the tension that it didn't get what it wanted. And so now it's trying to fill a void. And in that tension of not being able to hold my impatience and not being able to wait, my flesh would grab the roster and be like, well, who can I call to hang out with right now? Or where can I go out to have a date right now? Or where can I like occupy the space of empty time right now? That's how I used the roster 10 years ago. And for me, in that moment, that was my natural default state to being uncomfortable and awkward and emotional and vulnerable. I would want to fill it. I want to fill that void with what? I'd fill it with my roster. So that's how I held the tension of not getting what I wanted. That's how I held it. Now, nowadays, if you walk it back towards something new, walking it back forward, how can that feeling of the flesh change over time? How can that change? Here's how it changes. When we look at our flesh now, the way we might look at it is we might go into the flesh now and we might not have a roster. We might not go back and reach for someone or something or try to fill the void. So now the flesh might be faithlessness. That could be your new flesh. So over time, your flesh might change. And over time, however you sit into your flesh is what can actually keep you single, especially single over 30. It can actually keep you single. So here's what I'm saying is maybe back in the day, and you guys might not realize this because you might look like me. Back in the day, your flesh might have looked like, oh, I didn't get what I wanted. I wanted a person. I'm longing. I have a void. Let me fill the void. Let me fill it. Let me fill it with something new. So your flesh 10 years ago might have been drug use. Or your flesh 10 years ago might have been hitting someone else up and then going on endless dates with different people. For some people, their flesh might have been going to a dating app. That might have been the flesh. But the flesh can change over time. So whatever was at that point might not be what it is now. This is how the enemy is working against us and using our initial feeling against us. So what does the flesh look like now potentially? What the flesh looks like now can look anywhere opposite from what it did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So the flesh for me right now tends to look like faithlessness. And it may look more withdrawn or isolated. And so we have to identify that as my new default state. Like, so in Christ, my default state is more or less isolated or withdrawn or feeling rejected. That's more the default state when I get in my flesh. Does that make sense? But they're both in flesh feelings and they're both keeping us single on some level. Now, maybe you guys are opposite of me. Maybe 10 years ago, when you didn't get your way and you were trying to hold the tension of waiting for something, maybe 10 years ago, you would be the one who would isolate and withdraw and feel rejected. Maybe that's you 10 years ago. And maybe now you're seeking out and trying to control the narrative, right? So I'm not saying one is your default or the next. You have to search that. You have to get in a prayer, get in your prayer closet and search, what is your default place? Where do you naturally go when you're holding the tension of not getting immediately what you want? That feeling that you immediately come to is your flesh in this moment. And that feeling, you may not recognize it as the flesh because your flesh changed. Why does your flesh change? Because your heart is desperately wicked. Who can know it? So that flesh is going to change over the time. And the devil's using that feeling to keep us single. So you guys hear what I'm saying? So I wanted to come in here and talk to you guys about flesh really quick because I think it's a sneaky something that we're working against. And because it's ever changing, we may not realize that it's no different from the flesh in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. It's no different from the thing that's sexual immorality that God calls sin. It's no different from the envy, the jealousy, the covetousness that God calls sin. Our flesh is not just what we see in Galatians 5:19. Our flesh is our default state that our mind, body, and heart go to when we don't get our way and we have disappointment. That's actually our flesh. So I want us to think about that. When we get off of this call, I want you guys to actually think about, like, what is my flesh and what was my flesh 10 years ago? Because it's important to know, like, as we grow and evolve, we are changing. And what we gravitate to when we get needy or emotional or vulnerable or lost or lonely or rejected, or when we're longing for something and holding tension and we haven't gotten our way, we need to identify what that flesh is. And that's our prayer point, guys. That's our prayer point. The same way in the Bible, when we see that we're in our flesh and we feel angry, and we understand that anger is not a fruit of the spirit, and anger will not get us to the finish line of having a partner. It won't get us partnered with someone. It won't keep us partnered. It's a part of us that's at enemy with what God, with the spirit of God is inside of us. Does that make sense? So when we think about the flesh, we have to consider the fact that our flesh works against the spirit. That's according to Galatians chapter 5. Our flesh is an enemy of our spirit. And whatever that flesh is, it is controlled not by the Holy Spirit. Whatever that flesh is, it's controlled by ungodly forces. And that ungodly force wants to keep you single. It definitely wants to keep you single over 30, but it wants to keep you single. So that's what I wanted to bring to you guys today. Is I'm sitting here and I'm holding my own personal tension. And I'm saying, okay, where is my flesh right now? And I realize my flesh is in a different place than it was years ago. And because of that, it's a sneaky little deceiver. And you might think to yourself, oh, 5 years ago, when I felt in my flesh and I got rejected, maybe somebody went out and maybe they drank. Maybe they did something, maybe they used illegal substances when they felt like the pit of their stomach, the tension when they didn't get what they wanted, maybe when they didn't get love, or maybe when they didn't get a certain something out of life, whatever that something is. As soon as they didn't receive it, they said to themselves, oh, let me soothe this way. So your flesh is the way you immediately soothe when you're not getting your way. And we have to consider whether that piece of our activity is productive, yes or no, and whether it's leading us and ushering us into our space where we're eventually getting what we want, more of what we want. We have to think about that. So I wanted to bring that to you guys because I thought it would be useful for the purpose of this conversation, is for us to talk about the flesh versus the spirit, which is that area that we are able to endure, the patience that we have, the ability to be in long suffering, etc. That's a different space than the space of having tension and not really knowing what to do with it. Does that make sense? So now we have prayer points. Now that we understand that the immediate feeling that we get when we don't get our way, that's something that is a prayer point. That is like where our battle cry actually should be, if that makes any sense. And if we don't pray against it, it can be kind of wild and out of control in its own little way. And it may not look the way it looked in our 20s. That's the sneaky part of it. It may not look like that, but even if it doesn't look like that, it doesn't mean that it's useful or productive for the journey that we want to be on. So guys, if you're feeling like, so let's talk about it. If you're trying to get out of singleness, practically what you might need to do, if you figure out that for you, because everybody's flesh is going to look different. It's going to look different in this particular moment in time. For those of you that when you're in your flesh, you typically just withdraw and isolate and you stay to yourself. Remember, if that's your default state, if that's the immediate place that you go is just withdrawal and isolation, and that's what makes you kind of feel good in a way, and it kind of soothes you to just be all isolated and withdrawn, then that is something that it's in parallel with the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5, verse 19. It's very similar. And so we're going to need to pray against things that are actually what the flesh is. And this is where you guys go in your secret place and you pray about it for yourself and see if the word makes sense for you and if that's something that's keeping you single. This is where you go pray. I'm just going to give you the information, and then I want you to go pray about it and see if that makes sense for you, that if that represents your flesh. Now, the same thing is a good thing for someone else. For other people, their flesh might be, I didn't get what I wanted from this guy, so I'm just going to go chase these 3 or 4 different guys and put myself out there a lot. It goes back to your heart posture. Remember that everything about God is all about our heart. So it matters what your heart is in that moment. And if your flesh wants to withdraw because that's the natural state, then that's the thing that's probably keeping you single. It's because you're trying to withdraw and isolate versus trust God. And so in every season, the trust God part is going to look different because your heart has been changing and your flesh is different in every season. So in certain seasons, it's going to look like you needing to put yourself out there more because your flesh wants to stay withdrawn. In other seasons, it's going to look like you needing to step back more because your flesh wants to work for love, work really hard for it. Does that make sense? It matters what your flesh is for you in this season. And this is where you seek God. You got to figure out whether you are chasing love, unnecessarily running and working hard and chasing it. Because for you, if you're chasing it, then that might be your flesh for you in this season. For other people, it's kind of like a giving up and a withdrawal. That's your flesh, and your flesh is faithlessness. And so God doesn't want us to be in our flesh, whatever that is. So can we do less and stay alone a little bit and take a little break and still be in the spirit? The answer is yes, and it's about your heart. So there may be a season where you're like, I'm not capable of doing this, or God's not leading me to be out there right now. He just wants me to himself, and he wants to build me up for the next season. When you hear it that way, you guys see what I'm saying? This is where your prayer points are coming in, is trying to figure out in this season, what is your flesh and what are you battling? That's what you're praying about. You're like, God, what's the revelation? And you've got to think about what's your natural state. If you just did whatever came naturally, when disappointment hit, if you did whatever came naturally, what's the first thing that you're going to do? For some people in their flesh, as soon as they get disappointed, they will start sending word curses over themselves. They will say, I'm never going to have anyone. I can never keep a girl. I can never keep a man. As soon as they don't get the person, they begin to curse themselves with their own tongue. Does that make sense? So that is essentially, that is the flesh. So your fleshly response is, in that case, faithlessness and speaking word curses over yourself. And that word curse is preventing you from finding your partner. That faithlessness is preventing you from having your partner. Does that make sense? So there's a whole, like, we have to think about our season. And because our heart is desperately wicked and ever changing, we need to reassess what is our flesh in every season. So that's really my word that I had for you guys, is I want you guys to think about that, and I want you to pray about that. What is your flesh right now? Is your flesh right now giving you faithlessness, making you want to isolate and withdraw because it's a version of you that's saying, I give up? Because that's the faithlessness. You taking a break from dating is not necessarily giving up. You might be led to take a break, but it becomes faithlessness when you're like, I give up, God can't do it. And that's the heart posture thing. So the same two behaviors, taking a break from dating can mean I'm just taking a break from dating. God is still good. He still loves me. And it doesn't cancel his plans for me. Now that heart posture is someone who's taking a break, but they're doing okay. But if you're taking a break and in your head, you're thinking, God won't do it. I'm not worthy. He doesn't love me. He's forgotten about me. He turned his back. He's forsaken me. So that's a heart posture of faithlessness. That's a different heart posture, and the same person is waiting. Do you guys see that? So it is about the heart. It is absolutely about the heart. And it's absolutely about, the tension that we're holding when we wait. It's giving space to help us understand what's operating in us in the season of waiting. That's what we have to try to identify. If we're in a practical season where we're sitting down waiting on God, and That's okay. That can be okay. But it matters your heart posture in the waiting. If you're waiting and it's like you're looking like it from the outside, it looks okay, but your heart posture is, I've given up on God, then that's what you battle in your prayer. You go to God and you say, God, I'm struggling with faithlessness in this area. I need you to build my faith. I need you to build my faith in this area because I'm struggling and I just want to give up. My flesh wants to give up and withdraw and isolate. See, that's what you pick up and you bring to God in your prayer. Because even if it's not about a partner, God may have you waiting because he knows your flesh and he wants to work out those things out of your flesh. No different than him wanting to work out anger or sexual immorality or covetousness or jealousy. He wants to work out the faithlessness too. And he will allow us a season of waiting to build our faith. Does that make sense? So God will use that season for those things to build your faith. And what did I come on and say just a few weeks ago? I'm like, oh, my faith in so many other areas, my faith when it comes to money and finances and healing and family, my faith is level 10. But then when it comes to love, I get a little bit of, my heart gets a little desperately wicked in that area. And so it's good to know that. It's good to know ourselves, to know that, because that becomes your prayer point, is to say, God, I noticed my faith is a little different in this area. And the word says you're the author and the finisher of our faith. Lord, can you finish my faith in this area too? Does that make sense? This is a way that God allows this journey so that we can grow closer to him. Despite the fact that we are yearning for something in our natural life, we can use it to grow closer to him, if that makes any sense. So it's very similar for people who are, people that are kind of laid back and chill and they typically don't do much. It matters your heart posture. Like if you're chilling, you don't do much, but that's just, your heart posture feels stable. That's one thing. But if you're chilling, you're not doing much because you're giving up, that's a different thing. So God will have us work things out and challenging us to show our faith in different ways, depending on how flesh is represented in your season and depending how faith is represented in your season. Let's take a look back at like Genesis. In the book of Genesis, what did we see happen with Abraham as it comes to this concept of faith? Look at how they handled faith in that season. Don't forget, they were waiting on their son Isaac to come to birth, right? And they had been waiting, and they weren't waiting like 2-3 years. These guys waited over 20 years for Isaac. And in their waiting season, while Abraham and Sarah were holding the tension, the longing for their son, right? Everybody's got a different tension. For some people, it's love. For some people, it's a baby. For some people, it's a job promotion. Different people are longing for different things. And this tension applies to you. So Abraham was holding the tension of wanting this precious Isaac baby to come along. And in his tension of waiting, you can just kind of skirt through Genesis chapter 15 and 16 and 17 and 21, and you can kind of see the dynamic pieces of those stories, the storyline come together. God comes to Abraham and he has a talk and says, I'm going to give you a son. And in that waiting season, in the tension of that waiting season, they took it upon themselves. They, meaning Abraham and Sarah, took it upon themselves to go try to go around God and make the baby on their own. They thought, oh, let's go do it with Hagar. Let's go do it with the servant girl. And we're going to make this baby. You guys see that? So in our season of longing, in our season of holding the tension and waiting, we have to see what is going on in our heart in that season of waiting. Are we waiting and we're just waiting on God and it's a place of faith? Or are we appearing to wait? Do we give the air that we're waiting on God, but in our heart, we're actually just giving up, right? So that's something that we've got to think about, because when a person goes into the hopelessness, into the give up mode, when they give up, it manifests itself differently in different people. When some people give up, they get back and they backslide. They do something weird. They get on the streets and do whatever. See how that works against us and keeps us single? You guys see that? That's how the enemy enters. For other people, that hopelessness makes them want to isolate and withdraw and just not be present where the other single people are. And that represents an opportunity for the enemy to block our love. Do you guys see that? For other people, they're trying to in their season where they're holding the tension and the waiting and the longing for someone, they're trying to do more for themselves, and they're trying to work hard, and other times they're doing nothing. And for every person, it's their faithlessness is going to look different, and their season of being in their flesh is going to look different, and how they need to respond to it looks different. But that's the whole purpose of seeking God in your secret place, is to get in prayer and understand, in this season, God, what is my flesh? What does my flesh look like in this specific season? Is the flesh for me that I want to keep myself super busy, and in doing that, I'm blocking my blessing of my person, because in order to deal with the tension and the longing and the inability to wait with patience, I get myself so busy with life and this and chores and cleaning up and activities and events. Do I make myself overly busy to fill the void of longing for something? Do you guys see how that works? This is our flesh. In that case, that's your flesh, is that you're filling it with things and keeping you so occupied that now you don't have space for your blessing. You don't have space for the favor. Does that make sense? These are things that we have to think about, and these are the things we bring to prayer. Is, God, how do I prioritize my life right now? I've put too much on my plate, and maybe I did that because I was preventing sitting in the tension of longing for something, and I made myself so busy that I didn't want to have to sit in the pain of longing for something. Now I'm too busy. God, help me reprioritize my life. See, that becomes your prayer point. That becomes your prayer point, and God sees your faith in that and the dependency on him in it. And once you break free of that, it begins to have an opportunity where you can have your partner. Does that make sense? So this is how people over 30 are staying single. Little, like, small little windows into how it's happening. It might be from a place of faithlessness. It might be from a place of making yourself overly busy to avoid the void. It might be making yourself overly dating and all on the apps and overly crazy insane about it because you're longing for something and you think you've got to fix it all. For some people, they're withdrawing, and they do need to put themselves out there on an app or two, right? Some people are withdrawing because their default state is God can't do it. See that? And some people are putting themselves out there a whole lot because they think they got to do it all for themselves and do it independent of God. So all of these things are representing our flesh at different seasons, different moments in time. Some people are going back to their roster and recalling their exes and recycling the older people that never worked because it's out of faithlessness, it's out of hopelessness, or it's out of like not being able to hold attention of waiting on someone. So that's what I wanted to mention. And I want you guys to pray about that message because, again, it's one of those messages that I felt after so much time in prayer today, so much time with the Lord today. I was like, well, given this, what do I do with that, God? Like, what do I do with all of that? But I can see now that there are seasons where withdrawal is a good thing because you're withdrawing to be built up in the Lord and you're not running from anything, and your withdrawal doesn't represent faithlessness. But there are other seasons for other people where their withdrawal is actually running from something, and it's a way of self-soothing in a way that's counterproductive, and it's taking you off of the market so far that now no one can find you, and that can be keeping you single. It just matters where you are in time and where God wants you in that season. He may say, I want you to myself, I need to build you up. He may say, it's time for you to take a step one faith and put yourself out there. And that season looks so different for every person, and our flesh looks different in different seasons. So in one season, God may say, I need you to get out there. And other seasons, God may say, I need you to be in the wilderness, stick with me. It's gonna look so different. And even for one person, faith and flesh can look different 5 years apart for one person. Does that make sense? So that's something that I want everybody to really pray about. I just want everybody to pray about and make sure that they're not missing out on something because of it. Someone asked, why are so many people single in their 30s? I know quite a few. It's a lot of things. I think I'll have to come back and do like a whole segment on that. But I think People are single in their 30s for several reasons. Some of them just haven't found their person yet because their moment in time is a different moment in time. Look at Abraham and Sarah. Their moment in time was 25 years after God made the promise. So the promise wasn't late. The promise came when it was supposed to come. And it just, we don't have that concept of waiting the same way God does. And we just don't get that sometimes. So God's timing is not our timing. His ways are not our ways. So some people, it's perfectly fine that they're in their 30s and they're dating and they're single or etc. It's just that that's God's timing for them. Maybe their timing is that they get married in their 50s. That might just be God's timing. For other people, it looks very different because their dynamic of what's going on with them internally is totally different. Sometimes the person has counterproductive strategies and behaviors that they need to have worked out of them. So it could be different for every person. And for some people, they're not even, that's not God's in their plan. For some people, God's plan, perfect plan for them, his perfect will for them is to work on a mission that he has for them. It looks different for everybody. So yeah. Let's see if there's anybody else. I'm just running through. If there's like a couple of questions, I'll try to take those. Just looking to see if there's like a couple if I can take. Oh, thank you, Billy. That was sweet. All right. I got the somebody screamed the biological clock. That's a real thing for us. that biological clock never stops going off. Yeah, for some people it's timing, God's timing, and then they will get married when it's God's timing. Somebody said someone actually talking about something real. Thank you. Someone's asking about the human body. I'm going to learn about that in class. Awesome. When these days when I do Ask Me Anything, you guys can ask questions about anything. Alrighty. All right, I'm going to hop off. Guys, thank you so much. Join me next time when we go live with the Victory Life podcast. Bye, everybody.